Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Newsbrowse News broadcast. The Asahi Shimbun reports that U.S. President Donald Trump has de-escalated tensions with Iran, agreeing to a 2-week ceasefire and opting for a diplomatic solution instead of threatened devastating military strikes. Less than 2 hours before a self-imposed deadline for Iran to capitulate or face widespread destruction, Trump announced he would hold off on attacks targeting Iranian civilian infrastructure. This decision was made following conversations with Pakistan's Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, and Army Chief, who had urged for an extension of the deadline and the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's Supreme National Security Council has accepted the 2-week ceasefire and proposed a workable 10-point peace plan, agreeing to enter negotiations with the U.S. in Islamabad this Friday. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi confirmed that passage through the Strait of Hormuz would be allowed under Iranian military management during this period. The move comes despite earlier criticism from international bodies and U.S. Democrats regarding Trump's threats of potential war crimes. The war, which began in February, has seen significant casualties on both sides and regional instability. This diplomatic breakthrough offers a temporary reprieve from escalating conflict. According to the Canadian press, U.S. President Donald Trump has de-escalated the ongoing conflict with Iran by pulling back on his threats of devastating strikes, just hours before his deadline for major escalation. This move comes as the U.S., Israel, and Iran have agreed to a 2-week ceasefire. President Trump announced he would suspend attacks on Iranian infrastructure, contingent on Tehran agreeing to the ceasefire and the immediate, safe reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's Supreme National Security Council confirmed acceptance of the ceasefire and stated negotiations with the U.S. would commence in Islamabad. Iran has also proposed a workable 10-point peace plan, which includes demands for control of the strait, withdrawal of U.S. forces, and lifting of sanctions. Despite the agreement, missile alerts persisted in the region, reflecting underlying tensions. Previous threats from Trump to target civilian infrastructure had drawn strong international criticism, with concerns raised about potential war crimes. The conflict has already resulted in significant casualties across Iran, Israel, Lebanon, and Gulf Arab states. CTV News reports that the federal government is seeking to overturn a Canadian Human Rights Tribunal decision that awarded compensation to Indigenous complainants and witnesses. The tribunal found that the RCMP engaged in discriminatory conduct during a 2012-2014 investigation into historical sexual abuse allegations against a school teacher in Burns Lake, BC, involving members of the Lake Babine First Nation. The tribunal had ordered the RCMP to review its policies and practices related to Indigenous crime complainants and witnesses, and awarded $7,500 plus interest to the complainants or their estates and 4 witnesses. However, the Attorney General of Canada argues that police investigations do not constitute a service covered by the Canadian Human Rights Act, and that the tribunal is not the proper forum for such complaints, suggesting the Civilian Review and Complaints Commission, CRCC, or courts are the appropriate venues. The government's application seeks to have the tribunal's decision quashed in its entirety. The city of Vancouver significantly increased its event permit fees in April for the current year, with some rising by as much as 900%. For instance, a medium complexity event permit could now cost $2,500, up from $250. While City Hall cites increased overall costs as justification, event organizers expressed deep concern about their future, fearing that these hikes will severely impact small business owners, such as vendors who rely on event spaces. Christina Cressman, owner and founder of the Vintage and Handmade Society, VHS, of Vancouver, told City News Everywhere that the fee increases have profoundly harmed her organization's ability to support local small businesses. She anticipates a significant reduction in the number of events, noting that the once feasible opportunity for many organizers has now vanished. VHS has already been forced to curtail events and pass some costs on to its vendors. The city confirmed that fees are even higher for 3 downtown Vancouver locations: 800 Robson, 1009, It's21, It's21, and It21, 1,500 depending on the season. The fee increase applies to commercial markets, but is waived for cultural, community, and farmers' markets. Global News reports that Federal Housing Minister Gregor Robertson is in discussions with all provinces and territories to implement a one-year cut to the Goods and Services Tax, GST, on new home purchases. This comes a week after the federal and Ontario governments agreed to a similar initiative, waiving the 13% harmonized sales tax, HST, on new homes in Ontario, valued up to $1 million for 1 year. Robertson stated that provincial governments would be expected to contribute their own funds or introduce new legislation for the GST reduction. While a timeline for agreements with other provinces was not provided, the minister indicated that the aim is to inject momentum into the housing market, particularly in struggling regions like Ontario and British Columbia, and to mitigate potential layoffs in the construction sector. Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim has already called on BC Premier David Eby to secure a similar deal, as Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation anticipates a decline in new home construction through 2028 due to high costs and weak demand. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.